What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and in this one we are going to be opening up and reviewing Playmates' Burning Godzilla. I know this is a rather old figure at this point, but I've had it sitting around for quite some time, and I wanted to get it out to check it out to see how I feel about it. Playmates kind of retired the classic Godzilla line, which I think is a real shame, because they were actually doing some really neat stuff. I did never get their Baragon, unfortunately, although I did try, but I did get their Burning Godzilla, so in this one I want to check it out. This looks like it was part of like their first or second line. Maybe I've had this thing for a lot longer than I thought. Holy moly. It's time. The time is now. Let's do it. Starting out with the box, I don't love these Playmates classic Godzilla boxes. I thought they were rather lazy, using the same look as the Bandai ones. I understand that it's licensing. I understand that there's probably some rule making it so that they had to do some crud like this, but like, I'm not into it. I would rather see the Burning Godzilla here. Call me a purist, but I think the box should reflect the figure. Other than that, the back of the box features the 4 characters in this wave, which I do believe was like wave 1 or 2 of the Playmates classic line. And then there's a little Godzilla. So let's get the guy out. And here he is, fresh out of the box. His tail comes in a separate piece, and you can kind of plug it into the back here. Ooh, this is a very different styled Playmates tail than normal. See how this goes in. Yeah, I'm glad they moved away from that tail design. It did not go in very nice and easy. That was annoying, but now it's in there. I like that the tail is this totally soft vinyl plastic, very Bandai of them. The rest of the body is a harder plastic, but it's not the same type of plastic that they made their MonsterVerse Godzilla toys out of. It feels a lot more like a Bandai America Godzilla figure. This reminds me of the type of figure I had as a kid. That tail piece did not go in very well. That took some struggling. Now there it all is. It's all put together. And he is, just fresh out of the box, actually a really cute little toy. I think this thing's adorable. I love the look of it. I love the pose of it. I think it's a really, really cute sculpt, just in a general broad sense of the actual posing of Godzilla, the way he looks. I think it's kind of cute. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if this is essentially a rework of a Bandai Godzilla. It seems very, very Bandai in nature, and this was at a time when Playmates was maybe not as original as they could have been with some of their figures. As for the sculpt overall, this is actually kind of on the medium end for Playmates. We're not cooking as well as we do nowadays, but as for the time this was released, this one's pretty solid. The tail piece looks okay. It's actually kind of a less detailed piece than the rest of the body, which is interesting because that's typically flipped for Playmates. They've done a good job with the sectioned out tail. That looks nice, and the spines on it look good. Going into the body, the dorsal spines generally look pretty good overall. They have essentially the same shape as the movie, although they're not as movie accurate as they could have been. They don't exactly follow the literal shape of the spines from the movie in every regard, but they captured the likeness of it fairly well. Godzilla's head actually looks really good. It's actually a very cute little Heisei cat-inspired Godzilla head. I think it's very nice. The neck looks pretty solid. Going into the shoulders, they're big and puffy. That looks good. They've got the divots in around the midsection, which looks good. The chest looks very Heisei. The legs look good. They've got nice muscle detailing in them. The knees are great. That's very classic Toho Godzilla. There is a little smoothness to the sculpt overall. That generally happens so that you can articulate the figures without causing the figure to grind into itself. Although the way they've got Godzilla's arms positioned, you actually can't avoid him scratching on himself in order to get him to articulate. So it's not even like it totally worked, but actually this is a more detailed sculpt than a lot of the Playmates Godzillas wound up looking. One of the only things that is a little weird about it is the arm poses themselves, which, like I said, I do think they're kind of cute, but they also are pretty awkward. Specifically the way this arm sticks so far out, it's kind of odd. I think that would be something that would drive me nuts as a kid, is having Godzilla fight another monster. If you bend his arm to try and get him to fight it, you're gonna almost like risk popping it out of the socket. It is in kind of a strange pose. The paint is okay. It's lukewarm. I think they've done an okay job. Looking at it, it's instantly recognizable as Burning Godzilla, so that's at least nice. And they do have nice color choices. The color choices look very good. I think they've done a good job picking the yellow and orange to complement that. The eyes look very nice. I actually really like the eyes. The teeth look pretty good. The inside of the mouth is painted this duller purplish pink, which looks really good. The spines are painted really nice as well. They've got the white spines on the tip of the tail, tail. I don't know why Burning Godzilla's spines on his tail aren't white. It has always driven me crazy. And then the way they go from black to orange looks really good. That looks just like in the movie. Could have been cool if they used some translucent piece for the orange, but for a lower end figure, this is pretty acceptable. Where we get into some issue is the actual patterns they've painted on Godzilla himself. They just don't reflect the movie very well at all. At least they did go for like the veins stretching up Godzilla's neck like in the movie, although they don't actually follow the patterns as Godzilla's veins in the movie. The chest piece doesn't look like the chest piece from the movie. The little belly piece certainly doesn't look like the belly piece in the movie. And then the leg pieces like barely resemble Godzilla's leg pieces in the movie. I do appreciate that they've hit all the core components though. They've got the shoulder, the chest, the belly, the leg, and then the neck. Those are all the core components of the original Burning Godzilla design. They just didn't do a very good job capturing the shape of those burning pieces. As for articulation, you've got one joint in the tail that lets you swivel it all the way around. You can kick your legs out, swing them all around. They do get caught up against the sculpt here, so they are limited in their mobility, but you can force them through it. The arms can go all the way around, Godzilla's head can spin all the way around, and that's it. Although it is a softer figure, so you can bend the tail, which is nice. You can close the mouth, clamp it closed, and like I said, you can pinch the arms in to get them to do little punches. Overall, there are 6 points of articulation, which is generally standard for this type of Godzilla toy. They have done better, but it's pretty standard. This is such a classic figure from my childhood, and that it's got the lines on the back where they've put the dorsal spines into the body. All the Godzilla toys I had as a kid had that issue. I busted all the Burning Godzillas out for this comparison, but we'll start with, I think this is the Bandai US Burning Godzilla, getting the two side by side, and they have different strengths and weaknesses. I actually think overall the Playmates sculpt looks a little better. It's not as chunky or awkward. The Bandai one is in such a strange pose. I've always hated the pose it's in. The Playmates one is in a better pose. The arms, although also awkward, are in a better pose than the awkward arms on the Bandai one. The face looks way better on the new Playmates one. There's actually a ton of improvements. You know, having the two of them out, one thing I did notice is that at least Bandai painted the fingernails and toenails. Playmates didn't bother to paint the fingernails and toenails, so that's kind of lazy on Playmates' end. On the other end, Bandai didn't paint the spines on the tail, whereas Playmates did. I do think overall the paint on the Bandai one is a lot better. It just looks more like Burning Godzilla in the movie, and it captures the aesthetic far better than the Playmates one does. So sculpt, I'm actually going to give it to the Playmates one. Even though the Bandai one has better texturing, the sculpt overall looks better on the Playmates one. And then paint wise, I'll give the edge to the Bandai one. So they kind of even each other out. There they are standing next to each other, and I like that they're visually distinct from one another. They're pretty solid next to one another. Like I said, the Bandai one is going to look a little better just because of the paint, but I do think they bring something to the table, each of them. I think each of them has value. There they are. They look pretty solid. Playmates' maybe most unrendered figure was their Destoroyah, but I figured I had to get the comparison out. Godzilla and his nemesis Destoroyah. They look okay next to each other. The Destoroyah is not a very good figure. It looks untextured. It's very clunky, very shiny. The paint isn't great, but at least it's imposing next to Godzilla, and at least you can have the two of them square off, which is a pretty cool function. Let's have a Heisei accurate fist fight. And now imagine the camera shaking like crazy. They just kind of hugged in the Heisei series. If they could go full for it. Here's the NECA Burning Godzilla, one that is way more accurate and just looks awesome overall. I think NECA generally did a pretty good job with the Burning Godzilla, even though it's not my favorite sculpt. There they are next to each other, and you can just see the big quality difference. Different approaches to toys, different types of articulation, different paint job overall. Just very different figures in general. But there they are next to each other, and it's fun to see the two of them standing off. And then finally, although some of you insist we shouldn't call him this, here is Burning Godzilla 2019. And that is a very different style of Burning Godzilla, not only just in the approach to the figure, but also in the approach to Burning Godzilla overall. Monster vs. One's truly like a meltdown version. There they are next to each other. Awesome pairing right there. Overall, I actually think Playmates did a pretty good job with the Burning Godzilla. It's one of their better classic Godzillas that they did. I think it's generally pretty solid. The paint's acceptable, although not movie accurate, but the sculpt is pretty serviceable. And as a kid, this would be a very fun action figure to play with. I know this thing's not really being sold anymore, but I give this thing an 8 out of 10. I think they actually did a very good job with it, and I'm pretty impressed with it overall. Do you have the Playmates Burning Godzilla? If so, comment below and let me know what you think of it. As always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. I really appreciate the support I get in the Patreon. It is through the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to review figures like this in the first place for you. If you want to get access to the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below, where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.